As Union forces neared the Confederate capital of Richmond, Virginia, in early April 1865, President Jefferson Davis and his government fled south, taking with them a large quantity of gold, silver, and other forms of currency. However, when Davis was captured by Union troops on May 10 in Irwinville, Georgia, he appeared to have only a small amount of money. So, what happened to the missing Confederate treasure? In 1861, the Confederate States of America seized the government branch mint in Dahlonega, which contained $23,000 in gold and silver. By the fall of 1862, the mint had converted $40,000 in gold and silver from New Orleans into bars for transport to Augusta. Additionally, Confederate officials took $2.3 million in gold and $216,000 in silver coins from the Bank of Louisiana when Union forces captured New Orleans. The story begins on Sunday, April 2, 1865, in Richmond, when Confederate President Jefferson Davis received an urgent letter from General Robert E. Lee while attending church. Lee warned Davis that he had until the evening to load the gold onto a train and evacuate, or face capture by Union troops. 2 trains were prepared to leave Richmond's final defensive line heading toward Danville, Virginia. The first carried Davis and other Confederate officials, along with key government documents and records. The second was loaded with the Confederacy's entire monetary reserves, gold, silver, and other funds, as well as gold held by Richmond's banks, amounting to nearly $500,000, and significant contributions in the form of donated jewelry and other valuables. To support the war effort, Confederate leaders had appealed for donations, resulting in hundreds of containers filled with gold and silver. As the war neared its end, rumors began circulating among Confederate veterans that their fleeing commanders were carrying millions of dollars in cash when they left Richmond. These rumors were not limited to the South. Union leaders also estimated that the Confederate treasure was worth millions of dollars, hoping to motivate federal troops in their search for the fugitive Davis and his government. The true value of the treasure that left Richmond, guarded by Confederate Navy Captain William H. Parker and his young sailors, will likely never be known. In 1893, Parker told a Richmond newspaper that the government funds in his care amounted to about $500,000 in gold, silver, and bullion. However, rumors of millions still persist. By early May, both Davis and the remaining funds had reached Washington, Georgia. Whatever amount they started with, the funds had dwindled due to travel expenses. They had to pay $108,000 to troops guiding them near the Savannah River and $40,000 for supplies in Washington and Augusta, Georgia. Much of April 1865 saw Davis on the run. After President Lincoln's assassination on April 14, Davis mourned the loss, believing Lincoln would have been more lenient toward the South than President Andrew Johnson. On May 4, after Davis and his few remaining advisors decided to disband the government, they entrusted around $86,000 of the remaining Treasury funds to 2 Confederate Navy officers to smuggle the money to Britain, but it never arrived. That specific portion of the money was indeed stolen. After depositing the Richmond Bank funds in a local vault for safekeeping, Davis continued south with his wife Varina, their children, and a few others. They divided the remaining Treasury funds with another group they planned to meet in Florida. Davis was captured on May 10 by members of the 4th Michigan Cavalry. When he was caught, he was reportedly wearing his wife's shawl over his shoulders. At the time of his capture, it was reported that Davis had dressed as a woman to evade capture, though it was later suggested that he wore the shawl because he was extremely sensitive to the cold. Most notably, when Davis was arrested, he only had a few dollars on him, raising the long-standing question of what happened to the missing gold and money. Some believe that when Davis was surrounded by Union forces, they took all of the treasure for themselves. Others think the military handed it over to the government. There are also claims that the treasure was either dumped or smuggled into Lake Michigan, while some speculate it ended up there by accident. Prior to Davis's capture on May 10, 1865, at Irwinville, it was widely believed that most Confederate assets had been distributed to pay returning soldiers. The remaining funds in Richmond's banks were divided, with about 1/3 left in Washington, Georgia. A Union detachment was sent to reroute the gold to a railhead in South Carolina, but on May 24, 1865, robbers in Georgia ambushed the wagons, which had stopped for the night near the Chenault plantation in Lincoln County. The robbers made off with $250,000, though bank officials later recovered $111,000. Union Commander Edward A. Wilde led a search for more gold in the area, becoming infamous for arresting and torturing the Chenault family, whom he suspected of hiding the treasure, only to find they were innocent. As a result, Union General Ulysses S. Grant removed Wilde from his command. Another theory suggests that Robert Horatio George Minty, a brigadier general in the Civil War, worked as a railroad attendant after the war and was responsible for transporting the gold to Michigan for Union soldiers. It is believed that Minty took some of the gold to have a necklace made for his wife, then sent the rest on a ferry. During a storm, the ferry crew allegedly had to push the boxcar containing millions of dollars in treasure overboard, causing it to sink to the bottom of the lake. In another account, banker George Alexander Abbott, near death in 1921, confessed to his family that he had stolen Confederate gold and hid it in a boxcar being transported across Lake Michigan. The story was passed down through his family, but its truth remains uncertain. There is also a tale about Confederate Gold Gulch, where Confederate troops, on parole during the Civil War, discovered a small amount of gold in a gulch in 1864. This area later became known as one of Montana's top gold prospecting sites. Additionally, the Confederacy's efforts in New Mexico were severely hampered by a lack of raw materials for war industry, and supplies were often imported by Union soldiers from the southern United States or abroad, typically paid for in gold. Emperor Maximilian is said to have loaded 15 ox-drawn wagons with $10 million in gold bars, silver, jewelry, and other valuables. Was the gold stolen by the FBI? A significant amount of Civil War gold was reportedly lost in Dents Run, Pennsylvania. A new chapter in the Dents Run gold mystery began when FBI agents and state officials allegedly found buried gold in Benezet Township, just off Route 555. The case has been stalled in recent years, with no updates, and it remains unclear whether the treasure was actually discovered. However, there have been claims that the FBI was involved in retrieving it. Treasure hunters Dennis and Kem Parada believe the government found the gold and kept it hidden to avoid sharing the loot with them. According to the FBI, nothing was found at the excavation site in rural Pennsylvania. Now, the Paradas are seeking to prove their case in court. Pennsylvania officials have been required to submit their communications with the FBI concerning the excavation, which took place on state-owned land in Elk County's Dents Run district. This case was prompted by recently uncovered court documents. The gold was allegedly discovered by FBI Special Agent Jacob B. Archer in a cave on the land, and it is believed that state officials may have taken the gold for their own use, leading Archer to apply for a federal warrant to seize it without state consent.